So hopefully you're looking for notebooks in Azure Data Studio for the DBA. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that our clicker works. There we go. So who is this bearded fella who doesn't know what time it is? Hello, my name's Rob Sewell, and I am a consultant. I work for my own company, basically helping people to make stuff go quicker. I'm a dual MVP, so cloud and data center management and data platform, and I'm involved in a lot of open source. Let me just do this a minute. That's a client laptop. Open source projects, both in the data and Powershell world. And here we go. This is where the mayhem happens. That is Seek. The other one was called Destroy. No doubt they will be in and out for your entertainment as well. So let's start off with, like, hang on a minute. I'm not a data scientist. Why do I need Jupyter Notebooks? So this is Terry and Simon. And Terry and Simon are data scientists. They do things with R and Python and Spark and Databricks and make stuff happen. And this is where Jupyter Notebooks started. So let's talk about Jupyter. This is the planet Jupiter, the south pole of the planet, taken on a flyby by Juno. But we're going to talk about this Jupiter, the Jupiter spelt with a Y. And first, the name comes from the planet, of course. They wanted a name that evoked the traditions of science. Secondly, it's because of the languages that they use, Julia, Python, and R. But most importantly, it's because Galileo was the first person to discover the moons of Jupiter. And what he did was he included his data in his results so other people could reproduce what he was doing and prove that his data was correct. Okay, so what is a Jupyter Notebook? Well, first, let's just go back in time a little bit. A decade and a half back in time, in fact. Houston, we've had a problem. You see, we've been running queries. And those of us who have grey beards and have been around for a long time, we've been used to running queries in these boxes. Got the same problem with PowerShell. These are all the different versions of PowerShell. They all have exactly the same issue. And this issue, I think, is the biggest reason why DBAs should use Jupyter Notebooks. And that's what it is. It's that little box on the top right, the one with the X in it. We've got the same problem here in Management Studio. So let's imagine that you're a DBA and you've been called out at 2 o'clock in the morning because your bicycle manufacturing company database has gone wrong. And whilst you're doing your investigation, you run this query, and the query says that, let's take that top one, customer ID 1 is store ID 934. And you look at your notes and you work out that, yep, actually that should be 9340. There's been an error somewhere in an update, and that's what's broken everything. So you go through and you make your changes and you check that the system's back up and running, and the system's back up and running, and hey, yeah, that's all good. Maybe you did it in Azure Data Studio. Still have the same problem. Because you see, when you hit this cross, what happens is that your results, the ones that you need to keep, they're gone. They're just completely gone. And whilst most of the time that's not a problem, at that point, at 8 or 9 in the morning, when you go to your wash-up meeting for the incident that you were called out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you say, yeah, I saw it said 934. And one of your colleagues says, oh, I don't think it said 934. I think actually it said 937, because if it had said 934, then you would have seen this problem and this problem and this problem. And you go, no, I'm sure. And you go and you get Management Studio and you go, hey, open it. Oh, I've closed it, my results. They're all gone. So what is a Jupyter notebook? Let's make it simple. It's a document that can contain text, code, images, and query results. The query results are saved with the document. So if you'd run that query in Azure Data Studio in a Jupyter notebook when you were doing your investigation at 2 o'clock in the morning, when your colleague said at 9 o'clock, oh no, it definitely didn't say 934, you could go, well, actually, here we go. Here's the query I ran, and here are the results. Now, if that doesn't make you as a DBA want to start using Jupyter notebooks, then I've obviously got some more work to do. So where would we run Azure Data? Where would we run Jupyter notebooks? We'd use Azure Data Studio. It's a cross-platform environment for data professionals. Come on, Rob. It looks just like Visual Studio Code. Well, yeah, there's Visual Studio Code on the right and Azure Data Studio on the left. And they do look the same because they're based on the same code. And in fact, they're identical, apart from the Azure Data Studio has some additional functionality. What is the additional stuff that Azure Data Studio has? Mainly, it's things that make pretty colors. It's mainly the overlays and widgets and charts and graphs that are available to us to be able to show what's happening with our data. There are a couple of bits of Visual Studio Code that aren't ported over. Some of them, like debugging, is not available at the moment inside Azure Data Studio. But other than that, the code is exactly the same. Now, the notebook story is a little bit confusing at the moment. You've also got a chair in the way of your legs and .NET interactive notebooks. So these are new notebooks that were announced at Ignite this year, and there have been 2 or 3 updates throughout the year. They've got all the goodness of Jupyter notebooks, but the additional thing they've got is PowerShell core and C# and F# and HTML and JavaScript and no T-SQL. So if you want to use any of those languages, these are really good. They enable you to have cross-language notebooks, which is really useful in some cases. And I like to use them inside Azure Data Studio because I like using Azure Data Studio. So here is, that is a .NET interactive notebook. You can see that because the kernel says .NET in the middle. And it looks exactly the same as it would do in a non.NET notebook. You can do the same notebook, use the same notebook in Visual Studio Code, but as you can see, I don't think it looks quite as good. So personally, I prefer to use Azure Data Studio to display my Jupyter notebooks. There's also a preview Visual Studio Code extension, which doesn't require Jupyter to be installed. It's really cool. I like it a lot. It's very quick. It's nice and easy to use. Okay, the display is still maybe not as beautiful as you get in Azure Data Studio, but it is a good way forward. You've also got, because it exists, notebook mode in the PowerShell preview extension for Visual Studio Code. I don't like it. It basically turns the comments into Markdown and doesn't save the results, but it is something that's available. You might read about it. So just to show you that that exists. So we've got Jupyter Notebooks. We've talked about how we can use those when we're responding to something going wrong at 2 o'clock in the morning. What else could we do? Well, you could use it for runbooks, the things that you regularly do within your organization. You could put those into notebooks so you can add your documentation alongside your code. Your users could then use the notebook, they could run them, and if they needed to save the results, then they can save the notebook as well. Maybe for training purposes, maybe for when your new team member starts, so that you can put in the notebook, yeah, this is where the bicycle manufacturer is. This is where the sock factory is. You can go and find the databases for the reporting over here and give them some of the common queries and help them understand the language and the things that goes on without having to keep coming back and asking you. Probably a little bit easier in these days of working from home if they have a notebook that they can follow that you've created. It's kind of a good way of doing it. Or as you go through and you learn how to do new things, maybe you're watching these videos from SQL Day or from other conferences and you're making notes and you're building small demos, do those in notebooks. Then they're nice and easy to share with your team members. Look, you can do this. Just go and connect it up to our dev DBA instance, and then you can run these and see how everything works. Maybe it's for doing demonstrations, not just as a presenter, but also when you demo to a client, or you demo to your team members or your boss. Look how fast I've improved this query. Look, this is what it was. Now look at what it does. Maybe for open source things. And don't forget that because the notebook saves the results, you could actually have 2 lots of notebooks. So you could have one that you could run ready to show your client. But then if everything went wrong, you could revert back to one you'd already run before, which had the results included. And you could say, this is what you would see. Basically, the universe is your oyster. Whatever it is that you can think of to do with them, please go ahead, try and think about what you could do. So here's a great example from Julie from Microsoft of how you can use instant response notebooks and what the flow could look like. So it's going to start with an instant response system generating an incident. Maybe it's because a user phoned the service desk and they filled it into the system. Maybe it automatically generated because of some metrics that occurred. And the first thing that you're going to do is a person, maybe the service desk, maybe they call somebody out, is then going to investigate and hopefully mitigate the issues. And they're going to use the notebook as the audit trail of what they did. So they're going to open up Azure Data Studio and they're going to use their existing notebook, which they got from their troubleshooting notebook repository, because we keep things in source control. Once the incident has been investigated and mitigated, the next stage in an incident's life cycle is the post-mortem, where we're going to investigate what happened, how we could improve it, were we alerted in time, what other things could we have done, maybe how could we mitigate it quicker. And whilst doing that, you're going to analyze and enrich your troubleshooting notebook. Update it and add it back into the repository, ready for the next time that it's required. Have some sort of rating system. So you say, well, yeah, this one worked really well, or this one needs some work. And then in times of quiet, you can go and improve the notebooks. Maybe there wasn't an existing notebook. Okay, open a blank notebook, right at the top, something went wrong, and then carry on as before. Investigate, mitigate, put everything into your notebook. And then afterwards, in the post-mortem, you're probably going to spend a bit more time writing up your new notebook, making it look and feel and document everything that you've done, and then add it back into your troubleshooting repository. Automate as much of it as you possibly can. If you can create systems within your incident response system, within your management systems, that can automatically enable you to log notebooks in or open the correct notebooks, then find the ways to be able to do that. So that's enough talk, especially as we haven't had a lot of time. So let's have a look at some notebooks. But first, you might be wondering how I did this bit, because this bit's kind of cool, yeah? Well, just took a bit of Powershell and PowerPoint and Streamlabs Ops, which is a streaming software. And I wrote about it there. So if you go to beard.media/slobs automation, then you're going to find the blog posts that show you how I did this. Ah, there we go. We don't need to see that bit. Are there any questions? Let's go to there. Is anybody there?
Yes, no questions so far.
No questions? Okay, excellent. So let's do some setup, because we need to make sure that, let's check that we have SQL Server is running. That's a good start. So let's come to here. Let's make this big. Don't want to this. This is Azure Data Studio. And what I'm going to do is not the Past Summit Precon. Let's do something different. So we're going to open up the Jupyter Notebooks folder. If you want to know where all of this is, let's open a new window.
Sorry for interruption, Rob. Agnieszka and Artur, they are mentioning that the quality of video is quite low. So if you can reshare, and you have option at the bottom of resharing.
I can share the screen. Yeah, sure. I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah, something like optimize your video quality or something like that. Not sure if it will help, but
I can share the screen now, but then you just won't see me, which is fine. Let's do. Which screen do we want to share? This one. How about if we do that?
oh my, now it's totally better. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you want to find my everything that you see, you go to github.com/SQLDBA with our beard, and you'll find a Jupyter Notebooks repository. And in there, you'll find some notebooks. We're going to look at the not .NET ones. We've also got .NET ones. And one of the beautiful things about having notebooks, let's try this one, is that when you open a notebook in GitHub, it takes a moment, but it will actually render the notebook. So you can see that this is the script that we ran. There's a lot of it. Let's keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh my word, there is an awful lot of it. Somewhere down here, there are some results. Should have picked one that wasn't quite so large. There we go. So there we go. So now we ran our query and we got some results. So we can see we had 35 rows affected. It took an oomph of a second. This is when it was run. And here are our results. So even inside GitHub, we could share this. So maybe if you're working on a problem, you could create a notebook, you could show the results, you could share it on GitHub, or maybe you share it as a private gist if you don't want to make it public, and send it to your colleague or your friend and say, hey, look, these are the results I'm getting. Look, see, when I run select star from QPI file stats, I'm getting this for master data. What does that mean? And then you can collaborate on it and they can improve it. Now, maybe you can't actually run the code in GitHub in the browser, but you can at least see what's going on. You could download this notebook and run it yourself. So how do we, that's fascinating. There we go. Lovely. New version. No, we don't want any of those. Let's go away. So how do we start with a notebook? So what we do with everything that we do is we type Control-Shift and P. And that's going to work in Visual Studio Code and in Azure Data Studio. And it's going to do open the command palette. And once you get the command palette, you can then start searching. So we'll start with notebook. And the most recently commands are going to rise up to the top. So you can see I run a new notebook very often, and we'll hit enter, and that's created us our notebook. Now for me, it's done it straight away because I've got everything needed. If you've never opened a notebook before, it's now going to prompt you and say, would you like me to install Python? Do we need these additional packages? Take the default versions. Even if you already have Python installed on your machine for other things that you're doing, take a very low airplane, take the default installation and ask it to install again. Don't try and use your original installation because the packages you have there may not just work with notebooks as you expect. So take the defaults. It's going to take 5–10 minutes, something like that. Now, once we've got, I bet I haven't got Zoom it started. Let's do that. Here we go. So once we get to our notebook, we've got, as we can see, we've got an add cell button. We've got a button that enables us to run all of the cells. And we've got a kernel. Now this kernel is not a kernel like a Linux kernel. This kernel is basically the language that this notebook is going to run. And this notebook is going to be run only using this one language. So for this one, it's going to be SQL. And as you can see here, if I do that better, then we can select the connection, select the instance that we wish to connect to. And we can also add a new code or text cell in the middle there. So we'll start off by adding ourselves a text cell and also check that that's not a delivery arriving, because that would be funny as well. Yeah, we shall see. And when you get this, you're going to come in with this code view here. And this is going to be your default view. It's not mine. You saw me just change it there. And this enables you to type. Now, I prefer this view because in this view, I can just write straight markdown here. So I can create a heading and then maybe a subheading and maybe I want some bullet points. I could do that. Maybe I can go over to here, have some sub points. So you can see I'm quite comfortable with working in Markdown. I'm making everything work. If we're looking at this here, then we could go and change things to heading 2. We can change it maybe heading 3. You can add things in here. But the beauty of this view is absolutely astonishing. Let me do this. So this is my Streamlabs OBS. I'm going to put it over here on this screen. I'm going to press Shift, Windows key and S to give me the snipping tool. And I'm going to copy what I've got. And then I'm going to come to here. In fact, I might just do that. And I'm just going to paste. Boom. I've just taken a screenshot and pasted it straight into my notebook without even thinking about it. So that's really cool if you think about documenting your incident responses. We can just go take a screenshot, paste it straight in there. There are other things that this can do. Let's add a new text cell. We'll put it in the proper mode. Maybe you've got everything in OneNote. I know you do. I know you have stuff in OneNote. And let's search here for Git flow. So maybe you've got a notebook, that a OneNote page with your documentation in it. Maybe it's got some words, got some pictures, maybe some more pictures. Here we go. Now what you could do is you can just go Control A, Control C. We'll minimize that and paste. And now what we've got is our OneNote document, straight connected, converted into a Jupyter notebook. Now, one thing you can see there is it doesn't look very good because I've copied it and I'm looking at it in dark mode. And actually, what we should have done is changed our theme to light mode, because we should always do presentations in light mode. And then you can see that it looks a lot better. So that's 2 ways that we can add images or other things. Now that magic works with Excel sheets, it works with documents, it works with web pages. You can just put it straight in. All right, so let's do something else. Let's some code and select a connection, and we'll go to localhost. And we'll just prove that we're here. Select server name. Here we go. Maybe we'll add another code cell, and we'll do select attachments. No, actually, let's do select get date. Here we go. And as SQL day, Rob doesn't know time zones. Here we go. Let's play. There we go. So now we've got our results. Now, you remember what I said about our incident, and we hit the cross, and our results are just completely gone. Well, let's open Azure Data Studio again. I didn't even save the notebook. You can see here, that means that the notebook isn't saved. If we now save it, and we'll save it as c/temp/day. There we go. Now, if you look back up here, you can see that we've got a cross there. So that means that the document, the notebook is actually saved. So before I did that, it was not even saved. But look at this. There's the query I wrote. And there are my results. And just in case you think that I'm making all of this up and I had it all there ready, I mean, A, you saw how prepared I was for this demonstration. I was completely out of whack. Secondly, there's my query. And here we go. 1st of December, it's 11:57 my time. All right, it's now 11:59 my time. So I think that is just magical. It also brings into some thoughts like, hang on a minute, where is this data stored? I am not going to do that, because if we look at our markdown, what I might do is just create a new notebook. And this will make complete sense in a second. And we'll just do select at server name, and we'll press play, and we'll do it on localhost, and then we will save it. We'll save it as SQL day 1. So the reason I've just done that is because if we look here at our markdown, you can see that to enable the magic to happen, our clipboard has been converted into a base 64 image. And base 64 images are pretty big. And I also included the other thing. But we want to know where our results are stored. So if we run a little bit of PowerShell, we can do get content, which just means read the file. And it's C/temp SQL day 1. And now you can see that this is our notebook. So we start at the top. You see our notebook is a type of SQL. We've got a code cell. This is the code that we've run. And then below that, we're saying this is an output of type display data. We had 1 row affected. The total execution time was this. The information about our query, that's good for us to have. And now we've got our output. And here's our output. It's of type execute result. We've got our column info about all of the information about our columns. We've got, oh no, these are data types. Come all the way down, and what we've got is some fields, our columns. And if we had numerous columns here, these are all going to be listed one under the other. And then we've got our data. So there is our data listed one under the other. So actually, I say that you should always use source control for your notebooks. It's really good for looking at differences in the documentation that you do. It's really bad when you're looking at comparing the results of your queries. Because as you can see, that's 1 column and 1 row. If you have 15 columns here and you have 2,000 rows, they're going to be 2,000 lots of 15 of those. It's going to get really confusing. My results are on disk in JSON, completely unencrypted. So if you are storing or retrieving data that needs to be protected, it's got PPI in it, it's whatever, you need to protect your notebook in the same way. Also, if your query brings back a gigabyte of data, your notebook is going to be a gigabyte in size. Okay, so we've got 7 minutes, so hopefully there aren't any questions. If there are, just shout them out, and let's go and have a look at some Jupyter notebooks and do something cool. Let's maybe make sure that our agent is running. So start service. Agent, good. Maybe we want to do, let's check our for job failures. So we are, oh wait, thank you very much. We're now running a PowerShell kernel. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this one to say localhost. And we're going to look for all of our agent jobs that have failed in the last 1 day. Here we go. Let's see. We've got our pester results and test passed. Oh, 0 because I probably don't have any agent jobs. So we've run our notebook. We've got our results. We could save that and they will be there when we come back. Here are our results. If we look in source control, you can see we've got the difference between, on the left, execution count of nothing. We hadn't run that cell. On the right, here is our PowerShell output. Just to show that for a PowerShell notebook, the output works in the same way. Those are probably not going to work because I don't have the containers running. So let's do something different. Let's create some containers. So we were talking about how we could look at our open source. So let's start here. And we've got a set of notebooks and we're going to run this one. And it's going to come and say, you can't do that anymore. Excellent. Good work, Rob. That's because you're running the wrong one. Let's try running this one. So this is our .NET kernel. So just wait for that to start up. Now I can run you. And you're going to say, please enter the path to the notebook. Because the one thing is it doesn't know where it is. Now we're going to create 2 containers. Here we are. So we just created 2 containers. Now I'm controlling the environment that's available. And that means that I can come to the next let's do backups and restores because we've got like 2 minutes. So I can come to any of these notebooks that we've got here. We've run the create containers. So I've got some containers. Let's prove that we've got some containers. Here we go. There are our containers running. 2 containers running. And now I can run this. Check that we've got a connection to our containers. Yep, it says we have a connection to the containers. Now I can just check my default backup. My default backup has got a dummy file in it, nothing else, just a dummy file. Let's see when the last time our databases were backed up. I'm going to run that one, and you can see that some of them haven't been backed up for nearly a year. Oh, probably should sack the DBA, but actually let's just, instead of doing that, let's just back up all of our databases. So backup DBA database, SQL instance, SQL1, we'll pass in a credential because we're running as in a container, and now we can just pass in our path, and lo and behold, we get some prettier output in our .NET Interactive, and there are our results. We've just backed up our databases. So if we go back and check our directory again, then we can see that, there we go. Now we've got our, not only our dummy file, but also each of our databases backed up in that folder. And you're going to say, well, actually, you know what? I'd rather have a directory for each database. So we can just add this create folder parameter. And when we get to the end and we look in our directory, then you can see we've got our directories, one for each database, And inside each directory, we've got our backups. So super quick. I'm really sorry. I got time zones completely wrong. It's a quick fly through our notebooks. You can go and find them and play with them at my GitHub. You'll see that there are all sorts of notebooks here, looking at the agent jobs, doing some auditing work. We've got exploring the Brent Ozar things. We can do anything with DBA tools and DBA checks. Some things about file groups and extended events. Just some other things about that you can do. Hopefully you can do that. My name's Rob Sewell. Please feel free to send me some questions, and you can also send me as many time zone gifs as you like on Twitter, SQL DBA with beard. So if there are no more questions, or if there are questions, I'll happily answer them. Otherwise, how are we doing? How was that?
No questions, as I see. Crystal clear, apparently. So thank you very much, Rob.
You're more than welcome. I think I managed to hit my time spot on as well. So
yeah, so say hi to your kittens.
Yes, there they are. Up to no good. Let's turn that one off. Here is one. And the other one is just here, slightly out of view. So there we go.